Welcome back. In the previous video, we added some HTML elements to the canvas. Just like this, we just drag and drop elements onto the page. Now let's go about styling them. Let's select this paragraph, for example, and change its font, color, and size. We could give it a color of something blue, for example, and also increase its size to something a bit more visible, let's say 24, and also increase its height. That means it's not as creased. There we go, there's a bit more height between the lines. Now, as you might have noticed, first of all these changes we did to the element were immediately applied in the canvas, so we can always see what we are doing to an element. And second of all, you might probably have seen that the changes we did to this paragraph were only applied to this one paragraph element, not the other two paragraphs. What though, if we want to change the second or third paragraph to same styling? We could, for example, apply exactly the same styles to this one and could go back to the typography section and give it a blue color and change its size and height. However, that increases our workload significantly and introduces quite a lot of room for error. Instead, we can take the stylings we just did and give them a name and group them together. And taking a look here at Webflow again, you can see that Webflow has given these stylings a name. The name is paragraph. You could, for example, change this name, which is also referred to as a class, to something a bit more descriptive. Let's call it colorful text. And now, if you want to use these styles and apply them to a different element, all we have to do is select that element and apply the same class as the previous. And if you now decide, for example, to change the color to something red, you can see the same styles are applied to all the elements that have the same class name. This way, we can easily adjust our design without having to find all the elements we styled according to the same rules. And that makes it very easy to reuse styling and keep consistency throughout our website. Let's take a look at our page again and go to the preview button. And as you can see, all the elements are nested very closely to the borders. There's very little breathing room on the left and right hand side of the elements and also between these elements. That makes it look very congested. Let's go about and changing that. So let me do some quick changes to the text element in order to demonstrate the changes we are doing now. First of all, I'm going to give it a background color of, let's choose maybe something green. And in order to make this text more visible, let's change it to black. There we go. Now it looks pretty aggressive, doesn't it? If you scroll to the top, you find an area called spacing. And you can see we have two different options we can choose between spacing this element out. You can give it a margin or a padding. Let's just see what happens. Let's give it a margin on the left-hand side of 40 pixels. And you can see the element got pushed away from the left-hand border. It got pushed away 40 pixels. If we instead give it a padding, let's say on the top of 40 pixels, you can observe that the text within the text box got pushed down, but the size of the element increased. So in general, we can say margin is meant in order to give the element more personal space. Padding increases the element size and creates more space within the element. Let's demonstrate how margin and padding work on an unstyled element like this text element. We can give it again a margin of this time 60 pixels and a padding of 60 pixels at the top. You can see if you go to the preview, here this element, this text element, didn't have any styling applied to it. So we don't see a green background, or we don't see a border. So we don't really see a difference between whether we have applied any margin or any padding to it. It looks exactly the same. That leaves us with the question, when should we apply padding and when should we apply margin? Generally, I would say try to apply margin unless you want to increase the element size, or you want to give something like text within an element more breathing room. So, for example, give this text some more breathing room in terms of the border. Give it a padding of 40 to make it breathe within that green element in itself. Otherwise, though, in order to space out elements on the canvas, try to use margin instead.